Welcome back to Gruber Motor Company and the Gruber Morning Show. I'm Pete Gruber.
I'm Mark Schaffner. Good morning and welcome back to our podcast.
And the image behind you is taken at the Point Tapatio Cliffs. It is not too far from my house, actually, and there's some beautiful roads going up there. The resort is nestled in some hills, and this is looking west one evening, and I thought it was an interesting interplay between the sunset colors and then the blue to the right, which is where Mark's head is right now.
Yes.
And I don't know if you can see detail, but behind Mark are also some cliffs that were cut to accommodate the construction that took place. You know, the story with this is Bobby Gosnell in the 70s was trying to talk the city into allowing him to build this resort on these hills. And of course, the city was into preserving mountain preserve and that sort of thing. So the deal that they finally struck was, if he was willing to carve a road and extend 7th Street through those hills, they would allow him to purchase this property.
Oh,
and
really?
He did, yeah. There was a lot of blasting that went on, and that's why when you drive through there, you'll see stone faces on both sides.
Yes, yes.
Because they had to carve through solid bedrock in order to make 7th Street extend. And 7th Street back then, I believe, either ended there or they had a drive around, and I can't remember which. It was back in the 70s here in Phoenix.
I was here in the mid-'80s and it was already done at that point, and it's just a beautiful resort up there.
It is, yes. So anyway, that's the picture behind us. We're going to cover some questions that came in yesterday during the Tesla Roadster podcast, which is a Roadster-specific podcast we do at 4 p.m. Mountain Standard Time every Wednesday. Any of you that have Roadsters that want to join us or just want to observe, you're more than welcome. We try to limit the questions to Roadster-specific type questions. So we've got some news items today.
A lot of new stuff, a lot of stuff going on this week, it seems like, in the EV space. But let's go ahead and get started with our questions. John Junker from YouTube was the first one who asked us a question and said, how long should a drive unit last? John says, I own a 2014 S85 rear drive and have had 2 complete fails of the drive unit.
Well, the early Tesla Model S's had some drivetrain issues, and these are the types of things that are virtually impossible to discover during the validation process for an auto manufacturer, because they really have to go through, you know, a period of time in order to capture some of these types of errors. One that cropped up within a year or so was what was called a milling noise. And I'm not even sure what was causing that, but it kind of sounded like a pod racer going down the street. It had something to do with the bearings in the motor. And my wife actually still drives one of those. And I think we have one in the lease program that has that noise as well.
Well, we have one in the lease program. Mine has a fairly audible milling noise. But we find that the milling noise isn't really much of a problem as long as you kind of get used to the noise. And sometimes it can be kind of loud, though.
And people can hear you coming. Like, I go to garage sales at times, and oftentimes people walk right in front of you because they don't hear a car coming, right? If they're not watching. With that milling noise, there's no doubt there's a vehicle there.
So. That's definitely true.
But anyway, to answer your question, John, there are some issues with the early Tesla Model S's, drivetrain issues. There are motor mount issues, for example. There are bearing issues where coolant will eventually breach the bearing and get into the inverter. And part of it is driving style. The motor mounts, for example, tend to break with people that do more spirited driving. I don't think my wife is going to break any motor mounts. The same is true with the bearing failures. It's the amount of pressure that exists during hard acceleration that eventually compromises a bearing that's inside the drivetrain. So you've had 2 complete fails. It would be interesting to find out when the last failure occurred, because Tesla improved the product every time. And, you know, if it was recent, then I would be concerned.
On those failures as well, am I right, Pete, in saying that there's a newer type of ceramic bearing that seems to be holding up really well with the drivetrains?
Yeah, I believe so. It's a part that is restricted that Tesla doesn't sell, so we know very little about it.
Okay.
What we're also, of course, hoping is that at some point Tesla will take all of the restricted parts off of the list and start making them available to companies like us that
Right.
repair their cars. But for now, at least, there are certain parts that we can't reverse engineer because we don't have access to them.
Right. Mr. Lewis from TikTok also asked us a question. What tests have been done regarding how electric batteries and charging electric batteries affect the health of the human body?
The concern there, of course, is electromagnetic radiation and the impact on bioorganisms like us. There's some real polarized views on this. There are people that believe, for example, we talked about this earlier, that if they're buying a house, they make sure it's nowhere near any high tension lines because there's a certain amount of magnetic radiation near those. There are even people that believe that these things are dangerous, and if you have one near your ear, you could potentially be creating problems for your body from the radiation, the little bit that emanates from a cell phone during transmission or reception. I am unaware of any extensive research that has been done, and that usually indicates that people don't take it very seriously. What are your views on that?
You know, I've heard anecdotal stories. The story of somebody early during the smartphone times, like to hold the phone up to her ear like this to talk, ended up with a brain tumor that was in the shape of her phone.
Wow.
I can't deny that those anecdotal stories may exist. I've not heard of anything that's more scientifically proven or more rigorously tested that has said that there's any problem with the low levels of magnetic radiation. Electric car batteries, of course, when you're charging them, that typically is not something that's going to be done while you're in the car.
Right.
Every once in a while you might be sitting in a car. If you're in a supercharger, I do see that on occasion when I go to supercharge my car. But most of the time, I park the car by the charger, and I'm out and I'm doing something.
Right.
So it would be the discharge of the electricity that would be any kind of concern.
And from a radiation risk, or where the radiation would be emanating from, we can speak to that a bit. The primary charges in a Tesla Model S, for example, are underneath the rear seat. And that's where the AC is converted to DC. So there is some stray magnetic radiation, especially with a seat, which is non-ferrous, or there's no metal, you have cloth. And then, of course, the actual battery itself, there's an ample amount of metal between you and any radiation source inside the battery, and it is DC, so you're not getting alternating current type radiation. It would just be a simple magnetic field if there was any stray radiation without polarity changes, which I believe is the most concern regarding devices like this.
Right. Now, JT has added a comment this morning from TikTok. He says, and you could go bald.
Yeah, well, that might have been what happened to me, actually. I was around too many charging stations. So TikTok, Mr. Lewis, what tests have, this is what we just did, okay.
That's the one we just did. If you guys want to scroll up, Multicamzilla from YouTube. She asked a question yesterday afternoon. Do you know anyone who does rust remediation on a 2014 Model S, or I'm thinking on the Model S's overall? Multicamzilla bought an East Coast car. It's in Southern California now, but it has some rust on it, and Multicamzilla is worried that the rust might keep spreading.
Well, to put this in perspective, first of all, a Tesla Model S body is all aluminum, so you don't have any rust concerns there. Where the flash rust most likely occurs in a car like that is in the suspension components, in the ferrous metal type pieces like the control arms. The chassis is also aluminum in a Tesla Model S. So what we did with a Tesla Roadster, by the way, that came from back east, and we had a collector that bought a really beautiful, pristine, it was a twilight blue, which is that dark metallic blue. But he didn't like the fact that the undercarriage showed signs of rust in the suspension components. What we ended up doing for him was we actually soda blasted the entire bottom of the car. We took off all the rust, in other words, and then we clear coated the components that were cleaned rust. So it can be done. I would say your most likely vendor that would be able to do something like this would probably be a body shop, someone that has sandblasting equipment or soda blasting equipment, which is less aggressive than sandblasting. And it may not be cheap because you then, to prevent any further flash rust, because you've removed any flashing that may be on it or any anodizing or any paint to clear coat it, so you now have some paint and body work.
Tim Glasgow has asked us, first, welcome Tim, and before I get into the question, a couple things, just a little housekeeping things. First, we'd love hearing where you're from. So would love to have you guys tell us not only who you are, where you're coming in from. It's exciting to see people coming from all over the world, Europe, Asia, Australia, Africa, and of course here in the United States. Now, having said that, Tim is asking, what's your opinion on the Cadillac Lyriq?
We aren't the type of a social media company or a service organization where we get to drive different cars. We specialize in Teslas and primarily the Roadster. So we've never seen a Cadillac Lyriq in the shop. But what I would suggest is there are a number of great YouTubers that do these kinds of critiques. We had Juliana out here about a month or so ago, and she's with a YouTube channel called The Automotive Woman. And she does this very thing. She does critiques on various brands of electric vehicles. You might want to check out her videos because there may be one related to this. And then, of course, there's always Supercar Blondie, although these days I don't think she does normal sedans anymore. She has moved into some pretty exotic and weird things. I saw her doing a helicopter the other day.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But anyway, there are a number of good YouTubers that are doing these kinds of critiques.
Yeah, the best that we have is some of our personal experience, and mostly that's on Tesla. I know in my past I've driven a Kia Soul electric vehicle. I haven't been in a Cadillac Lyriq as of yet. I'm sure with the Cadillac name, it's going to probably be a good car. Joey's Cleaning Lady on YouTube. Good morning and welcome back.
Good morning.
She asked, does Tesla have a stash of new old stock PEMs, or are they takeoffs from other cars that they bought?
Good question. In 2008, Chroma was making the power electronic modules for the Roadsters in Taiwan. And they ended up with a supply of extra PEMs, or power electronic modules. There's a lot of conjecture, a lot of anecdotal evidence, but apparently Tesla at one point was throwing away a lot of Tesla Roadster parts, not thinking that it was important or they needed the space, and priorities dictated that the Model S was more important, or the Model 3, or whatever it was. What we do know is that they ended up with some Tesla Roadster PEM spares, a number of them. And over the years, what they did was they would take parts out of them to repair PEMs that were failing at the service center. They would put parts together to make PEMs, so if they needed a whole PEM at the service center, they used to cost $10,000, by the way. Then they dropped them to $8,500. And it looks like they still have some spare PEMs. So what you're generally getting is a recycled PEM because the production stopped in 2008, or you may be getting new out-of-stock PEMs, which we've also seen a couple of times when we got some R80 cars in. And when we opened that PEM to rebuild it, it looked pristine and brand new. It had never been opened. It was sealed, completely sealed. Those days, of course, are numbered because without the OEM still making PEMs, these are all being recycled. So at this point, you will end up with a remanufactured but used PEM.
We have one more question from YouTube. This is Rishi Ramalchan. Good morning. He is asking, have you ever retrofit side cameras to a Model X? He has an early 2016 Model X, and a later 2016 Model X that did come with the side cameras?
You know, I think we did a couple of years ago. I'd have to ask the shop guys, and if they're watching, they will probably chime in. They have a big 75-inch monitor there, and they've been known to watch our podcasts. So guys, if you can answer that question, we'd certainly like to hear from you.
Great.
So we've got some news items. It looks like Ford figured out the issue that led to their battery pack recall. Remember, they had problems with the F-150 batteries, and they recalled a number of them. Well, in this article, it actually puts a number to that. They only recalled 18 of them to replace their high-voltage battery packs. Now, the article says that they did not replace the trucks, but they replaced the battery packs. Even if the customer requested a different truck, they weren't going to give you that. They were going to just do the battery. And this work was done at their dealers. Remember, Ford now, unlike Tesla and Lucid and all the other latecomer EVs, have a service network in place, and it's the dealerships. So that's where the work is being done. They did not advise owners to stop driving their F-150 Lightnings or park them outside or limit charging. If you remember, GM did with the Chevy Bolt, and there was a risk of fire, so they admonished their customers, don't park that car inside your garage attached to the house anymore until we get a handle on this. So apparently they did not think it was as serious as the GM problem. Apparently the problem was noticed during a pre-delivery quality check, and they are offering free loaner vehicles to be provided to customers that are having their batteries replaced, but it will probably not be an F-150 Lightning unless the dealer decides that they have some that they want to put into the loaner pool. So if you have a relationship with your dealer and you have an F-150 that's going in for this retrofit, see if you can convince them to give you an F-150 instead of whatever else they're going to give you as a loaner.
Exactly. You know, I appreciate Ford's approach on this. Chevy's approach created a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt amongst all the Bolt owners, and actually amongst EV owners in general. Oh my gosh, what happens if my EV catches fire? And I saw a little bit of that panic as I was looking through some of the press on the Ford F-150 Lightning as well. The fact that they only recalled 18 vehicles and that they've been open and transparent about that, I'm actually pretty impressed. Just for retrospect, in 2022, Ford delivered 13,258 Lightnings. They're ramping up so that by the end of 2023, they can be producing 15,000 a month of these. And so far, they've sold about 3,600 Lightnings, or delivered about 3,600 Lightnings, and that's through the end of February. So that's 17,000 cars sold and delivered, and 18 have problems.
It's not bad.
They caught it immediately. They found the root cause. They said it wasn't a manufacturing defect as much as it was just a process issue, and they've corrected the process.
And it was in the month of February that they noticed this. They halted production until March 13th, and Ford will not comment how many trucks were built with packs that have these suspect cells, but the 18 that they recalled were in the hands of owners, and there may have been others that were recalled from the dealers or at least from the production line. So, but yeah, I agree with you. I think it was handled fairly well, and it looks like it was a slight interruption without any major delays. Looks like we have a question from YouTube. Core Glass, welcome back, Core Glass. Question is, why do you think version 4 superchargers were launched first in Europe and not in the US? You know, those are magical questions that we don't have answers to. But remember, it was also Europe that they opened up chargers to other vehicles first. So maybe Tesla likes Europe better. I don't know.
I don't know.
Or the regulations might not be as tight, which really doesn't make sense because the German regulations have to be far more severe than anything we have here.
I would think that France and UK also have pretty severe regulations in a lot of areas compared to what we have in the US. User 195 from TikTok asked one of our favorite questions. What's with the sunglasses?
Yeah, well, okay, that was the first one today. We're actually keeping account and tallying some of the questions and the responses. That'll probably be part of our video when we finally release why we wear those.
Oh,
You know,
yes.
I've noticed though that the rest of the social media team, when they chime in, they're not always wearing sunglasses. So if you have any doubt whether we're AI or human or robots, our social media team should convince you that we are very much human.
Yes, although I have been accused of being a robot at times.
Yeah, okay. Well, there goes Richard now.
Pete, I don't know what you're talking about. I have these things on 24/7, and I do sleep with them on.
Okay. So, can we throw up a picture of the Bentley vehicle? This one caught me by complete surprise. You know, I'm always looking at these traditional vehicles that are, and I'm wondering how are they going to transition into the EV space because they have a particular look and feel. So here's Bentley now. Now, if you remember Rolls-Royce and Bentley, they're still back in the coach days when you had horse-drawn carriages with lanterns on the side, and they were just they had that big massive appeal. This apparently is a new Bentley, and it is an EV, 100% EV. And we're going to have to wait until 2025 to see this. But here's the thing that really caught me. The 0 to 60 on this sedan is 1.5 seconds. Let that sink in for a moment. This is a gigantic sedan at 1.5 seconds. Now, the information was dropped by Bentley CEO Adrian Hallmark in a recent interview with Automotive News Europe. And he said that this EV is still in development, but they have a powertrain that's twice as much grunt as the twin turbocharged 6-liter V12 or W12 actually in the performance-focused GT Speed. W probably means 2 6-cylinder engines, right?
Okay. Pretty much.
So, yeah.
You said this is a sedan. This looks like a coupe, a two-door, right?
Are you seeing 2 doors? Yeah, I think you're right. So it's a clear departure then for Bentley, and boy, that grille is something else too.
Yeah, the lights, everything's cool.
Yeah.
It's very cool.
Oh, you like it? Okay.
Who doesn't like a Bentley? Come on.
Well, I need some gold chains in order to drive around with one of those. But anyway, the traditional Bentley, this V12 or W12 that we talked about, generates a robust 650 horsepower with 664 foot-pounds of torque. But this new EV Bentley is slated to produce up to 1,400 horsepower. And according to the CEO, it will deliver effortless overtaking performance from a huge amount of torque on demand. I think he's talking about getting on the freeway and passing cars.
Oh yeah.
Just some numbers here for you, Pete.
Yeah.
0 to 60 at 1.5 seconds, you're going to be getting 1.89 Gs.
Is that right?
That's right.
Okay. Actually, he talks later on, the same CEO of Bentley. He says, although ultra-fast acceleration is thrilling for the first few times you experience it, it eventually just becomes nauseous. So it sounds like he's been in this car. He's experienced it for a while. They are going to have 2 versions, though. For the faint of heart, they're going to allow them to dial it down to 0 to 60 in only 2.7 seconds. That's better than my P90D Ludicrous. Or it can be switched to the 1.5 seconds. So look for this thing in 2025. It's Bentley's first push into electric vehicles. And from a styling and performance standpoint, it's going to be a clear departure from what they normally do.
You know, Pete, a couple minutes ago you said, let this sink in for a little bit, and then you paused. That pause was about the amount of time that it would take that Bentley to go from 0 to 60.
Good point, yeah.
That's just for reference, guys. That's how fast this car is.
And the question is, would you perhaps not be nauseous after that kind of a launch?
Yeah, every time. If I did that once with my wife, she would like stop the car. Just stop the car. I'm getting out.
All right, Joey's Cleaning Lady, YouTube. It appears that these NMC pouch prismatic cells have all sorts of issues. VW, GM, Kia, Hyundai all have had issues. Wonder why all the big OEMs use pouch style versus can style. That's a good question. The original reason that Tesla, we're being told at least, was using the cylindrical 18650 cells. They had a choice to use these pouch batteries back then. Prius was already using them, for example, was to avoid paying royalty payments. Apparently the 18650 had been around long enough. There is another issue with these EV manufacturers, and we talk about this often. The amount of engineering that has to be put into a DC plant like this that contains an enormous amount of energy has to be pretty sophisticated and elaborate. You can't really cut corners. And there are a lot of batteries currently, EV batteries, that are evolving. That's part of what these recalls are about. And we are excited about the prospect of new battery technologies coming to light. And later on in the podcast,
by all means,
Mark is going to talk about one that is very promising and will replace a lot of these old technologies.
SoCal on TikTok, good morning and welcome. He asked if you ever opened up a Porsche Taycan.
I have not. How about you guys? Anybody driven a Taycan?
I have not myself.
No?
I've looked into them though. They are very expensive, but very, very fast.
Mm-hmm. And I've heard good reports. Kyle Connor, I think, drove one, and he has a YouTube video about it, and he was pretty enamored with it. I've even heard people say they liked it better than Tesla, so Porsche's doing something right. Later on in the podcast here, we're going to talk about Porsche a bit more. They're actually raising prices.
Yeah.
We'll get to that. TikTok, user 660. Great job, guys. Well, thank you.
Thank you very much. Zach Farlow also says good morning on TikTok.
Welcome to our podcast. So everybody asks all the time, when is the Cybertruck coming out? Is it really coming out? Will it be delayed like the new Tesla Roadster, which was supposed to be out in 2020, and here it is 2023, and there's still nothing percolating, it appears. Well, here's some good news for the Cybertruck fans that put down their reservations. By the way, the reservation, we talked about this yesterday, on a Cybertruck is only $100. All right, so you're giving them interest-free money, People that put down a $250,000 down payment on the new Tesla Roadster in 2017 when it came out?
2017.
$250,000 would get you a Signature Series Tesla Model S second generation. If you had put that money into Tesla stock and just let it sit there, that would be $1.83 million today. Now, your $100 isn't going to look anything like that, of course. But the good news is, regarding Cybertruck, they're hiring. There are ads around Tesla, Texas, Giga, Texas. They have 26 current Cybertruck-related open positions there. 23 are for manufacturing. The rest must be management or staff. But this type of hiring has been going on since November of last year. And then, of course, you add that to the fact that they have added gigantic presses from Italy to manufacture large casting portions of the Cybertruck, and their service centers are upgrading with different lifts to accommodate the Cybertruck. This is a real thing. This is coming, and they're talking about summer of this year when they start production and possibly releasing cars by Q3 and Q4 of this year.
Well, it sounds like Tesla might have learned a little bit because they're getting ready to do this before they release it. They've gone through early company growth problems where they've released the Roadster, released the first Model S, and not really been ready to take care of it. Their first service centers were just rangers that would go around the country diagnosing and fixing problems.
They've come a long way with their service centers, for sure.
Smuggler mentions good morning to us, and good morning, Smuggler. Sorry to hear that you only have 10 minutes or less. We love having you on.
Yeah, welcome. And squeeze in your question before you leave if you have one. SoCal, it charges very fast and has pouch cells as far as I know.
So he was the one that just asked us about the Porsche Taycan.
Oh, the Porsche. Okay. All right. We might as well get to the Porsche
Yeah,
article
why
then.
don't you
Yeah.
go ahead and go to that?
Yeah. There's a lot of discussion about it. All right, give me a second here, guys. Here we go. Porsche confirmed that it will impose a significant price increase on its models when it releases the new model year vehicles in the middle of 2023. And they're doing this to keep their profit margins at a certain level. They're looking at a 20% profit margin or cost increase as part of their Road to 20 strategy. They actually have a title for this project as well. This announcement was made by Porsche's finance head, Lutz Meschke, during a call with analysts, and he says that the German luxury brand can sustain and build on the strong operating profits that they gained in 2022. And then they give some numbers as to how much that was, and it was in the billions of euros, about an 18% return. So he says that expect a significant price increase in the middle of this year for the new model year vehicles. And the problem with it is, in our mind, is that the primary price increases are for electric vehicles and not as much for their ICE vehicles. And but again, they say that they believe that their customers would accept the higher prices. Well, that's optimistic, and let's hope that's the case, considering the other manufacturers are actually reducing and dropping prices.
Well, you know, the first thing that stands out to me on that, it was their money guy talking. Of course he's going to say stuff like that.
Yeah, he's probably at odds with marketing, I would suspect.
I would absolutely suspect that. They're putting a little extra value into their electric vehicle line as well. So I can respect that as a kind of the money guy here. I could respect them wanting to put extra value into that. Hope for the best for them, but I don't know if that's going to end up happening or not.
You know, in the automotive world, though, there's one factor that that also prevails at times, and that's brand loyalty. Even though a particular brand may cost more, I know the Dodge faithful were that way, the Mopar people, you know,
Right.
Or the Corvette people, for example. So that may sustain them, but it is a pretty gutsy move to attempt to squeeze margin in a market that has a serious downward price pressure at this point.
Yeah, by all means. You know, Smuggler even is commenting on this where he says, face it, they aren't going to be able to compete in the EV market with the margin that Tesla has.
Yeah.
Well, that's true. They might be trying to get closer to the margin that Tesla has. And Zach Farlow also says Porsche has to pay for all those buildings that they're popping up with.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, you know, Zach, I think you're probably right there.
So I'm pulling this one up for you guys. You can see these are the faster ones. I found them, and they're almost $200,000. But you get 2.6 seconds and 2.7 seconds, depending on which configuration you choose.
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to go up, obviously.
It's going to go up from there. And I mean, would you want a Porsche or would you want a Lucid at that point?
Yeah, good point.
You know, because your Lucid Dream Edition is only about $170,000, and I think they're
Well, there's the Sapphire too that beats the Plaid now.
yeah,
You know,
and that's going to come in at this price range as well.
So it looks like brand loyalty might save them, but we're not sure.
We're not sure. We're definitely not sure.
So here's an article, why solar electric vehicles might be the next generation of EVs. They mentioned three manufacturers here. The German company Sono Motors, which is a photovoltaic or solar cells combination car. The Southern California-based Aptera, of course, which, by the way, is a 40-mile range just on solar charge. And their claim to fame is the average commute is under 40 miles, and which means that you would never have to plug in and charge, especially if you live in Phoenix, Arizona. And the third company they mentioned was a Dutch company called Lightyear. They're all producing electric vehicles with integrated solar panels, which can harness the sun's power for anywhere from 15 to 45 additional miles on a clear day. So these cars typically use lithium-based batteries and can be charged using either grid electricity or leave them out in the sun. And you had mentioned battery improvements might impact the performance of these cars as well.
Oh, by all means. I think we're 10 years at most away from having a 1,000-mile car. I mean, Lucid already puts out a 500-mile car, and there are similar exponential improvements going on that I think are going to hit the solar industry within the next 10 years. I could completely see it be feasible where your daily driver that you're taking for groceries or for your commute, or that once in a while long trip, is an EV that has 1,000 miles of range and can charge 60 to 100 miles every day on solar. And so you plug it in once every quarter or something like that, getting it ready for a long trip or something like that.
And the exponential improvements we're seeing in technology and photovoltaics, where the capture ratio continues to improve, might eventually make it to the point where you don't even need inductive coupling. You have enough photovoltaic activity going on a vehicle that provides the charge that you need.
By all means, I think the bigger question will end up being in 10 or 15 years, if you're in a place that's as sunny as we are here in Phoenix, how do you make sure you don't overcharge your battery?
Right. They talk about the Sono Scion, which is the German company. They're expected to begin production in Europe in mid-2023, so that's just summer. And the price starting at $25,000 with a battery that has a 190-mile range, and it has 465 integrated solar half cells in the exterior. It's a boxy 5-seat hatchback and appears, as they say, unassuming but practical. And price, I think, will definitely make this a popular car.
I think it could. I've remember having read in the press before that $30,000 may be kind of that tipping point of affordability for people. The Sono Scion with that $25,000 car would absolutely fit into that. I was just reading this morning too that Volkswagen has announced their ID.2 All car, and same thing. It looks like a Golf, and it's about 25,000 euros, which is a little bit less than $27,000 US. And it's one of the first of at least 10 models that they have that's going to be on a common modular electric drive platform.
Some cool products are coming out for sure. We've got a question. Stephen Rose from YouTube. Welcome back, Stephen. His question is, will your production team allow viewers to include photos with their comments? Absolutely. We'll pop them up on the screen for the rest of the viewers. And what we do here with social media and podcasts is cutting edge, experimental. Are you shaking your head, yes or no?
Yeah, let me address that real quick. For YouTube and all these other platforms, we cannot enable allowing the audience to submit questions through the chat. So you can send any, pictures. You can send pictures to us. Evie@Gruber, I think, is the best email for that. But the reason for that is YouTube and a lot of these platforms have protections against allowing links and photos and things being put into the chat, because a lot of times that leaves the audience susceptible, because anybody that is looking at the chat can click on those and open those, and we never know where those links are going to go, what they're going to be, and it could be against the terms of service, it could be not safe for work, it could be violent content, any of that kind of stuff. So we can't allow that directly in the chat, but you can always email stuff to us, and we can review it on the back end. And we'll also look at creating a Discord server where you guys can join, like a chat server for Gruber Motors, and then you can submit stuff there, and we can pull it up as well.
Well, that was an example of marketing and sales and operations. And I'm a sales guy. We always say, yes, we can, and then we find a way to get it done. But Jesse makes a good point. So, yeah, no images at this point.
So, thank you, Jesse. Smuggler has another comment for us. He says, I'm thinking that in 5 years, the standard will be 500-mile range for base models. I think I agree with Smuggler in that sense.
I think that's a sensible prediction, yes.
I know that there are a lot of the environmental people that are already screaming at their screens right now saying, no, we can't do that. You have to have smaller batteries. Well, the market's going to dictate the demand a lot more than the environmentalists will.
I agree. SoCal says, my family already ordered a Sono Motors. We'll see how good it works. Yeah, we'd love to hear your feedback when they get it.
Yeah, by all means, please. Smuggler did also say that I'm also thinking that someone will come out with a sub-20s EV with a 200-mile range for in town. Yes, I think he's right there as well. We've seen some of those that are coming up, like the Electromeccanica Solo that's being built right here in the Phoenix area.
Mm-hmm.
So, Smuggler, sorry to have to see you go, but please do check for your comments and answers on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
Now we've got another car. When we're talking about inexpensive, like Smuggler has said, the 200-mile range and such. Volkswagen has partnered with a company in China to produce a sodium-ion battery car. This particular car gets about 157 miles of range, and it is actually made, it's called the E10X. If you guys could throw an image of that E10X car up on the screen. And it's made by Sehol, S-E-H-O-L. This particular little car does cover, like I said, about 157 miles on a range. It's capable of charging up to 4C speeds in about 15 minutes. And the sodium-ion cells currently ship with an energy density of 145 watt-hours per kilogram. I wanted to compare that with the Tesla batteries that they're making today. That right now is about 60% of the same energy that's in a Tesla lithium-ion battery pack. So the 18650 cells can do about 240 watt-hours per kilogram. Doubling the cycles and getting to 200 watt-hours per kilogram is going to be coming in their next generation battery pack. And they're also going to go from about 4,000 maximum charge cycles right now up to nearly 9,000 charge cycles in the new sodium-ion battery. This, to me, is one of the more exciting improvements that I've seen in a long, long time. Sodium is one of the most plentiful metals on our planet. You don't have to go and find it and mine it and pollute the environment. It's everywhere. And the ability to make the sodium-ion batteries is something that engineers have been working on actually for several years. So to see a pack that can come out and actually be serviceable as a first-generation pack, and I'm excited about. Also, it just so happens that this pack only costs about 25% of what a lithium-ion battery pack will cost to make.
Well, that's a game changer.
So that $20,000, less than 200-mile car, I think it's coming.
Mm-hmm. Now, this is a partnership, you're saying, with VW and a Chinese company?
Yeah, Sehol and VW are in partnership on this. So, you know, VW is talking about an electric ID.2 all. They're talking about low-price cars as part of their strategy already. I think it's only a matter of time before we see VW take that technology and these sodium-ion cells and apply it to their vehicles as well.
Mm-hmm. All right, we have a...
Yeah, Multicamzilla's back. We answered their question from yesterday earlier, but they weren't here, so now they're back asking it again.
Oh, okay. The rust remediation question? Okay.
Yes.
Yes, Multicamzilla.
Thanks for coming in.
Yeah, thanks for rejoining us. We talked about it earlier, but the only example we have is we had a Tesla Roadster customer that had the Roadster completely redone. We did paint improvement, PPF. It was a gorgeous car, twilight blue, and performance brakes, wheels powder coated. The only blight on the car after we were done was it had spent some time in a 4-season climate, and there was flash rust on the suspension components below the car. He wanted it perfect, so what we ended up doing was soda blasting the entire bottom portion, all the ferro metals, and then clear coating. My suggestion for you is to find a paint and body shop that can do mild sandblasting or soda blasting would actually be preferred. And then be prepared to spend a bit, because to keep it from spreading again or flash rusting, you're going to have some kind of coating on there, whether that's paint or clear coat. As far as who in your area, I don't know where you are, but yeah, I would say just shop your paint and body shops, and then ask for testimonials. Any customers that they may have had that have had anything like this done.
Yeah, and on the original answer, you made an excellent point too, Pete, that the Model S is largely an aluminum vehicle. It's mainly an aluminum frame, aluminum panels, and stuff like that. So you're not going to have a lot of rust on it. Although there will be some rust on the suspension components, possibly on the brake system.
Yeah, that's true. Even some of the control arms are aluminum. Very little of it, but yeah, you should be able to get it done.
They're in LA, so I think.
Oh,
there should
LA?
be, yeah.
Oh, there should be plenty of shops up there that can do custom work like that. If we can go up just one click, there we go. We have a TikTok question from Eric Tech. He says, it's actually a comment, he says he loves the Solo look. We got really up close and personal to to one of the Solo vehicles, made by Electromechanica, by the way, here in Casa Grande, not too far from us. And it's a three-wheeler, of course, but we got quite an education. First of all, there's a roll bar inside this vehicle, and pretty substantial. The other thing we were fascinated to find out is it is classified as a motorcycle, not a car.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
So your insurance is cheaper. And from a construction standpoint, it's a single-seater, of course. You're not going to be able to take your wife and the dog and the kids. But for a around-town commute vehicle, it was comfortable, roomy, and pretty interesting looking, So, yeah.
Now, is that roll bar similar to like the smart car that's, the 4x2 smart car is so small. It's, 9 feet long by about 5 feet wide, and it's built actually to be very, very rigid. I had a friend whose wife got into an accident with her smart car.
Really?
It was, you would think it was a parking lot fender bender, but actually she rolled her car because the car is designed to bounce and roll away.
Really?
That's how it dissipates its energy. Yeah. The funniest part of that particular story is that a few guys saw this happen, and they walked up to the car, and 4 big guys took and lifted the car and rolled it back up on an upright so that she could get out. And she was unhurt in the accident. So it looks like the Solo that we have the picture up of here would be kind of the same thing then?
Yeah, look at that. The roll bar is right behind the seat, of course. And yeah, it was an amazing vehicle. I don't remember, guys. Do you remember? This is an in-wheel motor, is it not?
Yes.
Okay. We talked about in-wheel motors to one of the vendors there, and I couldn't remember which one it was. So it was Solo.
Yeah, it was definitely Solo, and I think they go through LFE.
Right. Okay.
I think that's who it is.
Yep. We did a video, by the way, for those of you interested in in-wheel motors. It was fascinating doing the research. It's out on our YouTube channel, and it's called something about in-wheel motors. Is this the future, basically? All right, Multicamzilla, he says, thanks, sorry for being late. No problem. We don't mind reiterating. And it looks like Eric Tech is coming up with a question. While that's being typed, let me take you in a different direction. Can we bring up the picture of the Salzburg Service Center? The prettiest service center, at least this article claims, is in Salzburg, Austria. Salzburg is northern Austria on the Bavarian border, not too far from where I was born, actually. And this service center is in the shape of a piano. Now, I don't know if this was intentional or if this was, just because of the property that they had, and they had to squeeze it into this. But it's kind of fitting because for those of you familiar with Salzburg, it is the home of a very famous classical composer, Mozart, Amadeus Mozart. And if you're ever in that part of the world, not only are the Alps beautiful to visit, but spend some time in Salzburg. There are castles, there's a river that runs through it, and the scenery outside of the city is gorgeous. And of course, anything down in that region in southern Bavaria and northern Austria, or, well, yeah, all of Austria for that matter, is just a beautiful part of the world. So we have an interior picture of this too. Can we pop that up? And it's only one shot. It's not what you normally would see in a Tesla service center. All tiled floor, and looks like a gigantic skylight, but when we're there in July, we're definitely going to visit this one. And by the way, an easy way to get around there is trains. They are always on time, they're roomy, they're spacious, they're comfortable, and most things are within walking distance from the Bahnhof or the train station.
Well, and as we found out just recently, a majority of trains are hybrid as well.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, Europe definitely has a lot of hybrid or electric trains. Very cool. So it looks like SoCal says we have 2 companies working on in-wheel motor for semis, Seal Abeg and ZF. I wonder how they're going to get around the unsprung weight issue with in-wheel motors, but that'll be an interesting design challenge or engineering challenge to solve.
I think that definitely will be. Eric Tech has asked us a question as well. What are your thoughts on QuantumScape Corp for their battery tech?
You know, I'm unfamiliar with that company. There's one we'll have to research. Do you know anything about them?
I don't know anything about QuantumScape Corp myself, so I'm actually going to go ahead and write that down, and
Yeah, we'll take a note
we'll get
on
back
that.
to that.
We'll cover that next Tuesday then. Thank you, Eric, for pointing us in a direction here. Multicamzilla has a question. Do you guys work on Model S suspensions or mainly just battery-related work? We do it all. We even do body work, for example, although we don't typically like taking in collision damage cars. There's so many people that do a great job with that, and it's low-tech auto, and we really enjoy staying in the high-tech space. But yes, we're able to do suspension work, paint, body, PPF, and of course a lot of electronic repairs.
Just so you guys know, we are at 57 minutes.
57 minutes. Okay, so it looks like we're running out of time. Got another quick news item here. It looks like Ford Mustang Mach-E beats the Tesla Model Y and other SUVs in the latest crash test. Well, it's not a surprise that some of these other EV manufacturers are moving to the top of the list as they're learning how to build cars better. EVs, anyway.
I heard a little bit about this a few weeks ago. My wife and I, a while back, bought a Volvo XC40 twin recharge. And one of the reasons that we bought it is because of Volvo's reputation for safety, of course, and had heard about this, that the Institute Highway, Insurance Institute, and I don't remember the exact name, is the one that conducted the tests rather than the National Highway Transportation Safety Board. And they're the ones that they'll put out tests that the government doesn't typically do. And there are very few cars that'll pass some of these tests. This one in question, what passenger safety is in a rear seat was one of them. And they tested 15 different models of electric SUVs. I didn't know there were 15 models out there, but there are. And there were only 3. And yes, the Mustang was one of the 3 that actually had a good rating on safety. The Model Y was not one of those 3.
Interesting. Good job, Ford. We got to give them some kudos as well.
Got to give them some credit. And of course, Volvo was one of the 3 as well.
Bill Wood, welcome back. He saw on TikTok that you do maintenance on one of the main power boards. And are you using an air hose to blow out the dirt on the Roadster? Do I ever need to do that on my 2016 Model X? Fair question. One of the design compromises in a Tesla Roadster was the power electronic module cooling system. In 2008, guys, they had to get cars out into the hands of owners to remain solvent. So they ended up putting 2 12-volt fans, brush motor DC fans, underneath the Roadster, just above the skid plate, to bring air up to the power electronic module IGBT transistor heat sinks to keep it cool. Martin Eberhardt's original design preference was to use the scoops on the side of a Roadster, which are now non-functional, to provide passive cooling for that portion of the power electronics module, but they never got there. So every year, a Tesla Roadster customer has to do what's called an annual preventive maintenance, where we take out the power electronics module, and we take it outside, and we take off some covers, and then we use an air hose. And what comes out of there is amazing. Leaves, debris, twigs, insects, some really strange things at times as well. But it just fills up because those two motors down below act as a vacuum cleaner, and they're sucking air right from the road basically, and then depositing it up inside that power electronics module. The good news is Tesla always improves and learns from their mistakes. None of the later vehicles, Tesla vehicles, have this kind of an issue, even remotely. So no, you do not need to do a cleaning operation on any of your later Tesla vehicles.
Well, we've got just a couple more questions. I know we're just about at our hour. Eric Tech says, thank you guys.
You're welcome.
You're welcome. I'm glad to have you, Eric. SoCal, talking about the ZF trucks, I believe, is saying, check their sites. They're showing prototypes, and they want to make EV kits for combustion semis.
Very cool.
That would be very, very cool. Van Goatwagen, welcome and good morning and welcome back. He says, I hate to ask, but do you have any competitors?
You know, we like to think of competitors as partners. We like to think of being able to turn them into vendors and customers. We're the type of company that believes in synergy, cooperation, and partnership, and no competitive overlap is ever 100%. A smart businessman capitalizes on the areas of non-competitive overlap. Yes, we have competitors. No one does electronics work like we do in the Tesla Roadster space, but there are many highly competent companies that are out there working on Teslas, working on Roadsters, and especially overseas, for example. So yes, we have competitors, and at times we refer each other. It is a very collaborative, cooperative community.
We definitely take the view right now, especially with the way that the market is and the lack of businesses to serve that market, that the high tide raises all boats. Cooperating, we're going to go a whole lot further than we do trying to really backbite or eat at each other.
Totally. I have one final news item for you guys that I came across doing research for this podcast, and this one interested me. This is regarding EV vehicle fires. I mean, we all know that when a EV catches on fire, it makes the headlines. All those ICE vehicles that caught on fire barely, are even noticed. So here's some interesting statistics. From the year 2012 through 2020, an 8-year time span, there have been approximately one Tesla vehicle fire for every 205 million miles traveled. Let's remember that number, 205 million miles traveled. One vehicle fire. By comparison, the National Fire Protection Association, NFPA, and U.S. Department of Transportation shows that in the United States, there is a vehicle fire every 19 million miles traveled. Well, those are ICE vehicles. They have to be. The math doesn't add up here. So there are, again, as everyone knows, substantially less EV vehicle fires, but they'll continue to make the news because we fear the unknown. We fear the, things that we don't understand yet.
This reminds me of aviation versus driving on the ground. There are some people that are afraid to fly because they're afraid to crash. They're afraid, I'm going to fly, my airplane's going to crash, and I'm going to die. Because I heard about a plane crash 3 weeks ago, and everybody died on the plane, or something like that.
Right.
And yet the reality is airplane travel is roughly 99.9% safer than driving on the roads.
Sure.
You just don't hear about all the car crashes except on the traffic reports every day.
I told my chiropractor this story. In fact, that was that night that I was on the news, Channel 12 News, because there's a vehicle fire in Scottsdale. And she says, chiropractors have the same problem. We instantly make the news, but do you know how many people surgeons kill every day? And
Yeah, yeah.
but anyway, I thought it was an interesting stat. We have a couple of questions we can entertain. We're running on an hour here. Trucker Alistair, how are you?
Good
Welcome
to see
back.
you again.
He says, do you think that future EVs will have brake discs next to the electric motor, less rust on the discs? Ah, that's an intriguing question.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
You know, the electric motor does have a lot of regenerative power all by itself. So, but every once in a while, you do need that ability to stop fast.
YouTube, Freckles X20, great show as always. Thank you.
Thank you.
Multicamzilla asks, can you explain what the Tesla CCS upgrade for older Model S involves? Will it affect supercharging speeds up or down? And what speed can we expect from a third-party charger? You know, unfortunately, we have little expertise with the CCS technology because everything we see here in the U.S. is, you know, the standard charge type methods. So we're not versed, or at least I'm not versed on you know, answering that question.
I'm not super well versed. The CCS is the fast charging standard that's coming out. That's non-Tesla. So, for example, my Volvo that I drive has CCS charging capabilities. The easiest way to compare the two, I think, is to be able to compare the kilowatts per hour that can be put out by the chargers. The Tesla, you know, they're level 1, or their supercharging first generation was 75 kilowatts per hour. They've gone up from there to 150 and then 250, and I think they're up around 300 or 325 kilowatts in their maximum. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong on that. CCS charging right now tends to max out at about 150 kilowatts per hour, so it's still fast, but not as fast. I have also seen CCS to Trident adapters available for sale online.
Right.
So it's possible to charge your Tesla using CCS. I have never heard of any compatibility issues between them. Doesn't say that there's not any, but I know that I try to keep up on things, and that's one thing that I have not heard about. I have heard about some of these CCS charging stations that kill batteries. There's a little bit of uncertainty and doubt in that. There's a couple of subscription networks out there. One in particular that seems to be struggling with that. But that's mostly anecdotal evidence as well. There's nothing that's been hard and fast on that.
Well, thank you, Mark. Herbert Buder, I recognize the name. Welcome, Herbert. He is a Tesla owner in Germany. He says, just jumped into your morning show. Nice. What time is it on your end? Our end is about 11 o'clock in the morning. It's 7 p.m. here in Düsseldorf. Thank you for your shows. You know, we have a Tesla Roadster specific podcast, Herbert, that is every Wednesday. We had one yesterday at 4 o'clock our time. So it sounds like that's going to be in the middle of the night for you. So I don't expect you to get up and watch that podcast. But anytime you want to join us for these Tuesday and Thursday podcasts, which seems to be an agreeable time for you at 7 p.m., we would love to have you. And if you want to squeeze in some Roadster questions, please feel free to do so. And again, welcome.
All of our shows are still going to be available too. If you guys can't make the live, they'll be up forever on our YouTube channel.
Yeah, you know, you can check YouTube. You can check them out on Spotify. We have Instagram, TikTok. We keep them up on the different channels.
So it looks like we're coming to a close with this show, and we are still dialing in the precise time that we're going to do the Tuesday, Thursday podcast, the morning podcasts. So do we have any ideas how we're going to handle Tuesday next week, guys?
I think we're going to have to look at the analytics.
Okay.
And just see where we're at, and we'll announce it before we go live.
I know that with the change to daylight saving time for the country, Arizona doesn't change. So we're just taking advantage of this opportunity. Since if we were to keep our podcast the same time here in Arizona, it would still be changing for everybody else. We thought, you know what, this is a perfect time to dial it in. So we're going to continue to take some time and do that.
And our goal, of course, with these podcasts is to serve the communities that come in to watch us. So we're trying to figure out what the the biggest audio, the biggest audience retention is, and you know, people visiting our podcast. So next Tuesday, let's for now plan on 10 o'clock Mountain Standard Time, and if anything changes, we will let you know Tuesday next week.
By all means, please give us your suggestions. If you like it at a different time, we are open to those suggestions. And thank you and have a good day.
We'll see you soon.